Okay. What's your name?
My name is Tom Costello Sr.
Senior.
Yeah.
And what year were you born?
I was born in 1924.
Yeah. Whereabouts?
In Atchison, Kansas.
What were your parents' name?
Dick, the name R.P. Costello, and as I told, when I was 12 years old, I was sitting on the floor under the table, and my dad and mom was at the table, and my dad said, "Dad, what's your name?" He said, "Richard Peter Costello," and I say, "Well, that's Dick for short."
So how many, now you were born in 1924, and you had, how many brothers and sisters have you got?
I have 8 kids and a walk-on.
No, I mean brothers and sisters, how many do you have?
Did I have?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm one of 10 kids.
Yeah.
I was number 4.
Number 4.
Right.
All right. How many sisters?
I have 4 sisters.
All right, so you got 6 brothers.
Right.
Or 5 brothers.
6. Well, yeah.
All right.
There's 6 and 4 makes 10.
All right, and then what are the names of your brothers and sisters?
There is Mary, Mark, Vic, Tom, Ed, Janice, John, Dorothy, Bob, and Nancy.
Did you live? How long did you live in Atchison?
I lived in Atchison till I was about 7 years old, 6 years old or 7.
Then you moved to where?
We went to Dodge City. I noticed that I had my first communion in Dodge City, Kansas, and then I went to Atchison. Oh, from Atchison to Dodge City to St. Joe, Missouri.
All right, hang on just one second. I'm gonna do something here. It won't hurt. Okay, you got a piece of phlegm there.
Oh, okay.
You went to St. Joe, Missouri.
Right.
All right. So when you were a kid, what kind of things did you like to do as a kid?
I had a lot of fun when I was a kid because I pestered everybody, and my mother said I was out of all the kids, I was a pest for my mother, but with all of them.
Yeah. Did you get along with your brothers and sisters?
Well, yeah, it seemed like I did, as far as I knew.
Do you have any hobbies or special interests or anything?
Well, I was a big talker. Back then, I was always a big talker, and I was always talking about things that was going on, and I was quite a good speaker. And in fact, until I had my stroke here about 5 years ago, I don't talk so well naturally, but before then I could talk about everything and anything. And in fact, when I was in Christian Brothers High School in St. Joe, I was was the number 1 speaker in the school, and they gave me a prize as a book called Jesus. What is it? Jesus.
My Imitation of Christ.
Imitation of Christ, and that was my first book. In fact, I think that's the only book I've never read a whole book in my whole life, even though I read lots of stuff. In fact, I'm reading something right now about when was the first airplane in the air, and it was 1903.
Yep.
by Orville Wright, and but I've always thought that I go to Toastmasters, and I go. This is a talking club, and I've been talking in the club for 30 years, and some kind of a record on that, and I as I tell the people there that once in a while that in order to get smart, all you have to do is have a dictionary, your Bible, the encyclopedia, and the what's National Enquirer.
Yeah.
so, but even though I read a lot, I read a lot of stuff. I don't think I've ever read a whole book myself.
What was your first job when you were a kid?
I guess I was a newspaper peddler. When I was running in St. Joe, I was a newspaper route, and and that was big stuff in that day. It was like $20 a week, and that was like something like $20 a week, and that's how I made my living back then. And all my other brothers, I think all of them had paper rights along the way.
Yeah. And then okay, after the paper job, what did you do? You went to, from there you went to what? What did you do after paper?
I was actually still on the paper route, and I went to high school for 4 years, and then I went to the first year of college, and in fact, something that's kind of interesting. I'd get on the paper route. It was twice a day, and I'd go at 4:30 in the morning on the papers, and then I also do in the evening. And so, and because I was out catting around during the night, about half the time, I wouldn't get as much sleeping as I would. So I'd go to the second story in the college deal in St. Joe Junior College, and I'd sleep up in the second deal in a corner up there, and I'd go to sleep in the paper sack on my head for a pillow, and so one day this was like in 1941. This was right after Pearl Harbor, and I was up there sleeping, and the guy, one of the guys in charge, he took my foot and woke me up and said, "You ought to quit sleeping up there. You look lousy." And he said, "In fact, why don't you go to this? Why don't you go to this thing we have today when you get and see what the government is get people in the service." And I said, "I don't even have a pencil." And I said, "Well, I usually have that pencil in here somewhere. Anyway, here's one right here." And I didn't have a pencil then, and so the guy said, "Well, here's one. Here's one for you right here." So I said, "Okay." I went in the room and signed up for this course, and as it turned out, of about 200 people that took the course, I was the only guy that passed the course. And so anyway, in fact, my dad was quite impressed. He even called the school to tell him that the fact that I did get that, and I got a thing for the Navy as a officer in the Navy. And then of course I went to Parkville. I went from there I went to Parkville, Missouri, which is near Kansas City, and then I went from Northwestern, and then from Northwestern to the ship on the LST 1038, and LST is really a big ship. It was 330 feet. That's 30 feet longer than a football field, and I was a number guy in charge of the ship, and so so until the war was over, and in fact I was probably we had the first ship that went into Japan after they had the first ship that went into Japan after they shot a bomb the big Hiroshima and whatever the other place was, and our ship came in there, and then we were there for a week or two, and then of course we went on back to the United States, and then we and of course I've I want to back up and tell that along the way that after we were, when I was in junior college there, before the war, just before the war started, I was in the room there, in the library, talking like you're not supposed to do. But I was 2 or 3 other guys in the back, kind of in the back, and a guy named Paul Gray, and he asked me. He said, "Are you? Do you have a date? Have you had a date with this gal? What was it? Her name was." He said was. I can't think of it right now. I said, "No, I don't know who you're talking about." And so he said, "Well," I said, I can get anybody. I can get a date with anybody that I want to." So, and he said, "Well, I bet you can't get one with this gal." And I said, "Well, I bet for $5, I'll bet you on that." And that was back $5 was worth like $100 back in those days. So I said, so the next day we were back in the library again, and this gal, we were talking again to Paul and 2 or 3 guys, and she came, and this gal came up to the front of the thing to take a book in there. So I said, "Hey," he said that's the one we're talking about. This one called Queenie. They call her Queenie. The reason they call her Queenie, he said, was because she was the queen of the school for 2 or 3 things that was important at Benton High School. So anyway, so I when she said, "Well, that's the girl we're talking about," and I said, "I'll go get my date, my $5 bet right now." So I went and caught her, and she came down into the locker room, and she was putting her stuff in the stuff, and I walked along and I took a hold of her, and I sweet lip, and at the same time I snapped her brassiere strap, and she shot. Was quite impressed, and so I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Well, somebody said that you might want to have a date." And she said, "Well, do you dance?" And I said, "Well, a little bit." And said, "Well, when do you want to do it?" And I said, "Well, I'm pretty booked up, but let's do it like a week and a half. That'd be next Friday night." And I said, "That's good enough." Well, anyway, so then time went on there, like a year later, that we had some dates and stuff, and then we went to after the war was over, and we went to, like we were saying, we went to the Pearl Harbor deal, and we went I went to lots of places in the Pacific, and finally we wound up in Japan, and so then when we were we had some drinks in a bar in, I think it was Manila, I think it was, and I mentioned to somebody said, "What are you going to do now that the war's over?" And I said, "Well, I guess I'll just get married." And I said, "Well, who in hell would marry you?" And I said, "Well, I have about 12 of them that are waiting on me." And somebody said, "Well, I'll bet you $5 you can't even get one." And I said, "Well, that's another bill. I'll take that bill." So I sent a cablegram to Norm, and it said, "Hi, sweet lips. How about getting married when I get back home?" And so then, and she hadn't even responded with me for 6 months, because I didn't like messing with letters and stuff. So anyway, sure enough, I did show up, and she was in California then, and our ship was in California. So we we met each other at the airport, and I said, "Well, how about my cablegram about getting married?" She said, so we had a little discussion about it, and I said, "Well, there's about 4 billion people in the world, and half of them are males and half of them are females, so we don't have to get married to each other. So we either do it right or we don't do it at all." And so she said, so we went to a restaurant there and talked about it. And I wrote down the stuff that I suggested on get if we got married. So I wrote this stuff down, and so she said I told her that mainly that we'd probably have about 10 kids, and we were she was kind of an atheist then, so and I was Catholic, and that we wouldn't have any problems if we wouldn't have any disputes over the kids on being Catholic, and so she said that was fine, and I said, well, what's your after I've written all this stuff, I said, what is your requirements? And she said, well, the day that we get married, I don't have to work anymore outside of the house. And she said, well, that's good enough for her. So I said, and she has since then. She's never had a job since then.
So was that a verbal deal, or did y'all write that down somewhere?
That was that part.
Handshake deal.
That was right. And I said, that's what it was. We had a handshake there, and I said, that's good enough. So then we got a priest in Los Angeles and got married in the back room, and then we and I was still on the Navy I still wasn't released yet, so for about 6 months. So I got we made I got got Norm booked in on the ship, and we went up to Oregon somewhere to get the ship put away, and I guess that was the first female that was ever put on as being high in the service. So anyway, since then here we are. It's 53 years later, and we're still talking about it.
Yeah.
Is it still running?
Yeah, hang on just a second. Okay, so now you had all these bets with these guys that you could get these dates with all these gals, with Queenie and Norm and all this other stuff. So did you consider yourself a Don Juan of the armed services?
Well, in fact, I have a picture here of me at that time, and I'm supposed to be the best-looking guy in the United States in service in that time.
Yeah, well, what's the picture look like?
Well, here it is right here. This is a picture of me when I was in the service, when I was back then, and I if you'll look, you'll notice I was the best-looking guy in town.
Yeah, I still see the resemblance there.
In fact, I had some young gal ask me just a couple of days ago if told me that I was still the best-looking guy in town.
Yeah, so there's a rumor floating around town that you even had some of the other sailors hitting on you. Is that true?
Oh yeah. I always had a few queers that were pester me, and I was always nice about it, but I just kept on going.
So the old "don't ask, don't tell" was alive and well in World War II then.
That's right. It's still around.
Yeah. So when the LST went to Japan, what part of Japan did you land in?
Oh, in Tokyo.
So when the LST went to Japan, what part of Japan did you land in?
Oh, in Tokyo.
You went to Tokyo?
Yeah, right up the main thing.
Did you do any? Did you get off the ship and roam
Oh
around
yeah,
Tokyo?
yeah. I bummed around there and went a few places, and they were nice to me and all that. There were about 100. The judge told me that I put on the best show he'd seen in the courtroom for 15 years, and on my deal. And back, as I said before, I had my stroke. I could really put on the talking. So that was called the busing thing, where that came out.
Yeah, that was back in the early 70s.
Was it?
Yeah, around 1971 or 2, I think, is when all that was taking place.
Was it?
In fact, during the church episodes, you kind of had a special label kind of high pious order name put on you, Pope.
Pope Obnoxious. Yeah.
The first.
Yeah, Pope Obnoxious the first.
Do you know of any Pope Obnoxiouses since?
No one else has ever wanted to do it. I was more important than that one, deal.
So you'll be probably the one and only. Huh?
That's right.
All right, so the year right now is this is Mother's Day, May 13th, 2001. We made it into the new century. So what are your plans for the future?
Well, like I say, I'm not feeling so hot here lately since I had my stroke and so on. So who knows when I'm going to have to crap out and die. So there's not that much going on because I'm limited as to what I can do for how I feel, and as I say, I can't talk that much, so I'm not that acute because of my stroke, and so I guess we'll just wait and see what God puts me into.
As far as the state of the world in this day and age, and the way countries are run and things of that nature, what's your general feeling about the state of the world? Where do you think improvement could be, or what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I over the years I've always had letters in the about stuff that I wrote and people and that I had letters to the editor and stuff like that. In fact, the Daily Oklahoman here asked me to be on the regular deal with on the Daily Oklahoman, but to be on the payroll there, writing stuff. But I didn't want to do that way. All I wanted to do was what I wanted to do when I felt like it. So, but here lately, I think that there was a little article about the fact that, if I can remember what it says, it was about the fact that the world has gotten down to where it's gotten down to where with these kind of bombs we have now, that New York City or Los Angeles or anywhere can, or even Daily Oklahoma, Oklahoma City could be bombed, and so we nobody can keep from killing each other now. So wars are out or illegal now. It's a bum deal. But when they used to, you get like when FDR put the World War II together, and I don't know how many people were killed over that stuff, and because of the economy was lousy. Well, they can't do that anymore. They shouldn't do that, or at least they shouldn't. So we'll see what happens. In the meantime, while with this thing about the New Ordo, the Catholic Church isn't that important anymore to anybody, and they don't, and now the Pope, who is JP2, that's John Paul the First, he's been on the job for 20 years or something, and he's now 81 years old, and he's getting pretty frail. He's getting worse than I am for health, but he's coming out more or less saying that everything's okay now, that we don't have to have, we won't have Christianity like it is anymore. The Jews and the Arabs and the Muslims and all these people should go, according to him, we should all go be nice people with each other and maybe he's right on that stuff, and because this stuff is having all this Christianity is usually, or religion is usually put together just to keep wars and money put out. So it's gotten to be I think that's about the way it is now, and it waits to see what they're going to do about it.
What do you think is the solution to the Israeli-Palestinian problem?
Well, the Jews have always had a problem with Israelis, and they shouldn't have. I think it was that Harry Truman, or who was it that gave that land to over there, that gave it to the Jews?
It used to be called Palestine.
Palestine, yeah. Which president gave them that land?
Well, I don't recall exactly, but it was kind of a joint effort between the United States and England and a few others who were involved in the United Nations.
And that thing's they've been killing each other ever since, but all the time since the day. That's how Jesus showed up on the scene. Why, I guess they were killing Jews. The Jews were killing everybody back then, and the what do you call it? The Jews have, what's that deal they have? The people that are called where the people are wherever the United States gives the Holocaust. The Holocaust is the big Jew deal, and it keeps the Jews. It keeps the Jews in on their money. It keeps the money going, and the Jews are. It's a crazy deal for, and I don't know what will ever happen to that, because nobody really knows what the answer to that thing is.
It's just a big battle over real estate now.
Right.
Well, so it looks like a crowd of people are showing up here. So, you have anything else you want to just toss in on this little conversation?
Well, no, it's I think you probably have enough to talk about, and when I think of something important, I'll let you know.
Let me ask you this: looking back on your life, if you did anything different, what would you do?
I don't think I'd do any different. I had a good time, and I always enjoyed myself, and I always had a lot of fun, and I never had any complaints particularly, and it was always it's always been a fine situation ever since I've been alive, and I've enjoyed it all my life.
All right. You got a 13-year-old grandson in there. What's your advice for him?
He needs to listen to what I have to say, and I'll tell him everything he needs to know.
All right. We were talking with what's your name again?
Tom Costello, the good-looking guy.
The good-looking, best-looking guy in the United States Navy, World War II.
Right. Okay, and I'm almost that good-looking today.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay.
That's it.
Bye.
Bye.